Welcome to the Sarpy County Board of Equalization meeting. It's Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 3:00 p.m. Please silence all cell phones. We have a copy of the Nebraska Opens Meeting Act on the north wall of the county boardroom. We have present today Commissioners Kelly, Klug, Mixon, Warren, and Burmeister, along with our County Administrator Dan Hoynes, our County Clerk Deb Hotelling, our County Assessor Dan Pittman, and I think I got everybody that I'm supposed to announce. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to move on to the consent equalization agenda. A little explanation of, we have several ratifications on the consent agenda that have to do with publication, confirming publication of some items from a publisher that wasn't able to provide publication notice there, just a ministerial action. However, is anyone here on items that are on the consent agenda? It's items 4.1 through 4.15. If anybody is here on those items, please come forward. Okay, would anybody like to see anything removed from the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none.
Item 5.1 is a public hearing and action recommendation for approval of 13 tax exemption applications, Form 451, for tax exemption on real and personal property owned by qualifying organizations. Dan Pittman, County Assessor.
Good afternoon. All property in the state is subject to property tax unless an exemption is mandated or permitted by the Nebraska Constitution and enabling legislation is adopted by the legislature. Property tax exemptions are to be strictly construed, and the burden of proof is on the party seeking exemption to show that the property is eligible for exemption. Property tax exemptions may be allowed based upon the inherent nature of the property, the ownership of the property, the use of the property, or a combination of these factors. The following property is exempt from property taxes: property owned by the state and its governmental subdivisions, property owned and exclusively used for agricultural and horticultural societies, property owned by educational, religious, charitable, or cemetery organizations and used exclusively for educational, religious, charitable, or cemetery purposes. There's a 5-part statutory test to determine the eligibility for a property tax exemption. Number 1 is ownership. Number 2 is exclusive use. Number 3 is no financial gain or profit. Number 4 is restricted alcohol liquor sales, and number 5 is prohibited discrimination. Do you have any questions on the 13?
Any questions for Dan on this first set for approval? This is a public hearing, so are there any members of the public that would like to come forward to speak on this issue? Seeing none, is there a motion? I'll close the public hearing, and then is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none. Motion carries.
Item 5.2 is public hearing and action recommendation for denial of tax exemption application, Form 451, Bellevue Volunteer Fire Department, Inc., parcel 010634762 for tax exemption on real and personal property by qualifying organizations. Dan Pittman, County Assessor.
There were questions about the ownership and the use of this parcel. By the time the deadline arrived for filing the exemption forms, those questions have not been answered, so I recommend a denial. Since that time, they've cleared up the questions about the ownership of the property and the use of the property, and I'm recommending an approval.
Any questions for Dan on this one? This is a public hearing. Would any member of the public like to speak on this topic? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Anyone want to make a motion?
Motion approved.
Is there a second?
Is this to approve the denial?
Yeah.
No, this is,
Wait.
you said you have changed your opinion, and you said you were approving this now?
Recommended approval.
Recommend approval.
You need to
So I'm
adjust.
making a motion that we accept the commissioner's recommendation of approval.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Warren to accept the assessor's recommendation, changed recommendation of approval, seconded by Commissioner Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none, motion carries.
Item 5.3 is public hearing and action recommendation for denial of tax exemption application Form 451 Cornerstone Krugers, Inc., parcel 010-484-434 for tax exemption on real and personal property by qualifying organizations. Dan Pittman, assessor.
Cornerstone Cougars, Inc. is an exempt organization that owns a building down on a plat, a piece of land on a building and they operated as a school for the longest time. I had, it came to my attention that this property had changed its use, and I asked the Cornerstone Cougars to submit the proper form to inform the county of its change of use. That did not arrive until just a few days ago, so it's late. And I believe the recommendation from the county attorney is that we table this and give Cornerstone Cougars 2 weeks for the county board to take an action on this.
Yeah, I would ask that you take no action on this. It appears that when they submitted their 451A, which is a renewal of an exemption, it was the wrong form. So they have submitted the correct form now. We would like to reset that correct form in 2 weeks after we have the appropriate amount of time to publish and provide them notice.
Make a motion to table until June 6th.
Do we need to have the public hearing on the topic first?
Good question.
You can if anyone appeared today.
Okay. So this is a public hearing. Does anybody want to come forward on this topic today? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And what was your motion again, Commissioner?
Motion to table until June 6th.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Motion to table until June 6th by Commissioner Klug, second by Commissioner Warren. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none, motion carries.
Item 5.4 is public hearing and action recommendation for denial of tax exemption application Form 451 Hope International University, formerly known as Nebraska Christian College, parcel 010-404-929 for tax exemption on real and personal property by qualifying organizations. Dan Pittman, assessor.
Hope International University is a California corporation that did business in Sarpy County as Nebraska Christian College. Nebraska Christian College stopped holding classes in spring of 2020 on that campus, and now it is largely vacant. We've been trying to ascertain through the years how the property is being used, did a more thorough look at it for 2023, and it's my recommendation that the property, or it's my opinion that the property's primary use is not for any kind of exempt purpose. The property is for sale, and I'm recommending a denial.
Any questions for Dan?
Yeah, not a question, excuse me. When would this take effect? Because the property is under contract, so I just know that.
Yeah, and the fact that it's for sale and stuff really, it's a point I could have left out because it's really not material, I believe, but it would be for year 2023. So, because as of January 2023, it was not an exempt use.
Okay, thank you.
Although I think there's still tax exempt functions go on in the property.
They do claim some property tax exempt functions go on the property. You would not be aware of it if you drove out there. I've asked them for proof, leases, anything that would help me determine that some part of this property is an exempt use, and they provided nothing to this point. So my recommendation, and this is just my recommendation because there's other ways of doing this, is this to deny it, and then they have the right to appeal to Turk for a very small amount of money. They can provide us all the data we need. If they have, they made some statements on their application, I'll go from memory here, that part was leased to a church. Okay, which building, how many square feet? Do you have a copy of the lease? We can get those things in, and if there's a change be made without even going to Turk, we could give them a partial exemption. But it's just late in the game now.
I'm just going to make another comment. Again, it is under contract. It hasn't closed. Now, if it does close in 2023, which I believe it's scheduled to, then the liability there obviously would have to be brought up in closing. How would this situation work? Because you're going to say there's actual, okay, if the organization that purchases the property is truly exempt, then how will this all work? Will it, it'll be the date of the sale, and then, so, I mean, this is going to be one of those where,
Property taxes run with the land, not with the owner.
right?
So that would encumber that property, that tax liability, provided you denied it and that there's a tax liability on it. If it does go to Turk and they prevail at Turk to get some type of exemption, there would probably be a refund issued in order to clear up any difference in what they should have paid and what they did pay.
Okay, we'll let it just run its course.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dan? This is a public hearing. Would any member of the public like to be heard on this issue? You can state your name and spell your last name and your address.
Edward Weniger, 1709 Ridgeview Drive, Weniger. I've been down to the campus quite a few times. I just wanted to take issue with the comment that it's not apparent that it's used for nonprofit purposes, because it is. I mean, you go down there, there's a shelter for people that are in drug recovery. There's signs for the church. I mean, there's basically two buildings. There's an apartment complex on the side that may be leased to nonprofit purposes, but the main purposes are nonprofit. It's pretty apparent if you just at a first glance. So thank you.
Anybody have any follow-up questions? Any other public members like to speak on this one? Okay, I'll close the public hearing.
Well, okay, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Pittman. If there are only portions of the building being used for some other purpose, then it would be, you would look at just the portion, is that correct? But you didn't get information to let you ascertain that, I guess.
Right. And it goes back to that primary predominant use. You know, if it's a building, let's take a Lifegate Church at 72nd and Giles. Lifegate owns that entire building and the church is exempt, but there's a Scooter's Coffee in there. So the square footage for Scooter's Coffee gets taxed, the church doesn't. Okay, so there's a way of delineating square footage that is taxable and non-taxable. So that's the approach we take.
All right.
One quick question. So I know that we're waiting on information to be able to give any sort of exemption to them. How many times have we reached or attempted to reach out to?
3 times.
3 times.
We've had 1 telephone conversation and 2 email exchanges. And, you know, I believe they fully intended to ask for the exemption, and I kind of thought there'd be somebody here. Actually, I really believe because it's so big that I would start receiving documentation about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Can your office follow up a 4th time just to let them know? I guess they'll probably know that this took place, and then just see if they'll follow up at that point.
Yes, we can. What'll happen once you take action here, there'll be information on there about the appeal. I'm expecting that we'll have a conversation about the appeal and how they prepare for an appeal. And we help taxpayers prepare for appeals, so.
Thank you, Dan.
So one last one, because the other one we delayed to June, whatever. Would this apply here?
We could table this one for 1 week, but applications that did not have a change of use or that weren't submitted late need to be decided by the board by between February 1st and the end of May. So it will have to be done before June 1st. So we'd only be able to table 1 week.
We don't.
We don't meet
We don't
next
have a
week.
meeting next week. We cannot table a week.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not sure if I closed the public hearing, but I will close it if I didn't. Anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to follow the assessor's recommendation to deny the tax exemption.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion to follow the assessor's recommendation of denial made by Commissioner Kelly, second by Commissioner Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, nays Warren.
Item 5.5 is public hearing and action, recommendation for denial of tax exemption application Form 451, One World Community Health Centers, Inc., parcel 011563750, for tax exemption on real and personal property by qualifying organizations. Dan Pittman, assessor.
One World Health Centers is an exempt organization, and they have other operations that I'm aware of in eastern Nebraska, in Sarpy County even. They bought one piece of land with 2 buildings on it in the Val Verde area. That parcel is an exempt ownership, but not an exempt use. I drove by as recently as 2 hours ago just to have one more look at it to see if they did anything with it. There's a variety of different tenants in the building. As I see it, it's still an income-producing property that is owned by an exempt organization. And until they do some conversion to some degree, I can't recommend an exemption.
What conversion needs to take place?
To the exempt use, in this case, it's charitable because it's got that medical component. So if in whole or part, they started using it for that, then we could offer an exemption on that. One would assume with 2 buildings, one might be devoted to the One World mission and the other might be income producing until they expand their mission. Things like that typically happen.
So like the previous issue with the Christian College, if they can bring forth the facts in the future, even if the board accepts your recommendation to deny, they can bring back the facts and it can be brought up again for
That's
approval.
correct. They still have another opportunity. Yeah.
Would that have to go to Turk?
It would, in my belief, it'd be a Turk appeal. And once they start exchanging information with us, then we can make our determinations if there should be any change. The problem is, this is all as of January 1st, or for conversion as of July 1st. And if that's not been done, I think it's July 1st. You have, yeah. Okay, so if it's July 1st, so we're at the end of May, they still have the month of June to actually do a conversion. So what would happen there? Let's say they find out that you guys denied this, so they say, we're going to do something now. We're going to pull that tenant out and start developing this and do some interior remodeling and stuff for our mission. They file another application, and you can act upon that before July 1. So that could happen. Otherwise, it would be a Turk deal.
Any questions for Dan?
So just to clarify, using the illustration of the Christian College campus, if they were to make an appeal, that appeal would still have to go to Turk?
It doesn't even have to get scheduled yet. If they started sharing information with us and we could agree on some type of confession of judgment, then we could, Turk would assign it a case number and then consider our, you correct me if I'm making any missteps here, then Turk would consider our confession of judgment and then make an order on that. A great many Turks never do go to hearing. This information gets shared once a filing is made and we come to terms with what the value should be, so.
This is a public, oh, sorry, do you have a question, Gary?
So how long has this, when did they start using this property, or when did they purchase it? In 2023 or 20, how far do we go back?
Let me see if I have the application here. I think it was actually as part of the evidence. Oh, here we go. We received this application December 9th of 2022. So the assumption would be that they purchased it before January 1st of 2023. So, before January 1st of 2023.
And you say all the activities in this building are not for a nonprofit use?
Right. There's a dentistry office, there's a virtual reality gaming place, there's a dental clinic. I think I said that, sorry.
Okay,
Others.
all right, you answered my question. Thank you.
This is a public hearing, and I see that Mr. Levy is present. We'll have-
Pardon me? Those footsteps come up behind me.
To have you stand here with me. Good afternoon, Commissioners. David Levy, Baird Home Law Firm, 1700 Farnham Street. We represent One World Community Health Centers. We did file this application for exemption. I was here for another matter, but since this came up and there were some questions, I apologize for taking the board's time on this. We should have withdrew it, and I didn't think to do it. We thought at the time we filed the application for exemption that we would be able to get the existing tenants moved out of there. One World does have plans to open a health clinic in that location, and it just didn't happen or hasn't happened as quickly as we had hoped or they had hoped. So we don't have any objection to the assessor's recommendation at this point. It's correct legally, and by the end of the year, the thought is that they'll have the tenants moved and that they'll be in there doing their exempt use, and we'll file again for next year, and hopefully the board will see fit to approve that. So again, I apologize that this has taken your time, but I'm glad I was here to try and clear it up a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the clarification.
You're on my side.
Anyone else want to speak on the public hearing? I'll close the public hearing. Anyone want to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve the assessor's recommendation of denial by Commissioner Mixon, seconded by Commissioner Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none, motion carries.
Item 5.6 is public hearing and action, recommendation for denial of tax exemption application Form 451, Pause R Us, parcel 011608163 for tax exemption on real and personal property by qualifying organizations. Dan Pittman, assessor.
You might be familiar with the name Paws R Us. That was Betsy Newman, and she has an animal rescue operation in western Sarpy County, mainly cats, and she has some buildings, and she lives out there too. There was a adjoining parcel that was part of the operation. It sold to a private individual, and so it's no longer under Paws R Us, which is an exempt organization. So it sold to a private individual, and there is no apparent use of that piece of land for any type of exempt use, charitable, religious, whatever. So that's why I'm recommending denial on this.
Any questions for Dan? This is a public hearing. Would any member of the public like to speak on this topic? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Anyone want to make a motion?
Motion to approve the assessor's recommendation.
Second.
Motion to approve the assessor's recommendation of denial made by Commissioner Kelly, seconded by Commissioner Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none, motion carries.
Item 5.7 is public hearing and action, recommendation for denial of 5 tax exemption applications, Form 451, Southridge Church of the Assemblies of God, Inc., parcels 011601554, 011601555, 011601556, 011601557, 011601558 for tax exemption on real and personal property by qualifying organizations. Dan Pittman, assessor.
East of 72nd Street on Cornhusker Road, in the Eagle Ridge area, there's 5 lots at front on Cornhusker. It was one large piece of land that was subdivided into 5 lots. Southridge Church, which is an exempt ownership, purchased those 5 pieces of land. We get this really frequently, where a church, an exempt organization, will either be gifted or buy land intending to plant another church somewhere, and they're waiting for rooftops or fundraising so they could build a sanctuary and things like that. Oftentimes, they're big corn and bean fields, so it stays in corn and beans, and they pay taxes on it, greenbelt value, until some event takes place that meets the statutory requirement for exemption, for an approval for an exemption. In this case, these are 5 vacant lots, and I'm not aware of any agricultural use on these lots or any plans to use it agriculturally at this time. I'm not aware of any religious activity that takes place on any of the 5 lots. And there are some examples in the regulations about how you approach certain scenarios. And one of those is if an exempt organization buys a vacant lot, it is not exempt. It also says something about holding it for a number of years. And it doesn't give you that number, which number is 2 or 3 or 5 years. But in my experience in doing permissive exemptions, there are certain events that can take place on the land that would be considered religious use, and the land in portion or in its entirety could receive the exemption. So perhaps there's someone here from Southridge that can testify to what's going on or where they are in the process of building a church, and that might be helpful. Right now, I'm recommending a denial based upon the information I have.
Are these 5 lots separate?
No, they're all contiguous, just one long row.
Right, they're contiguous, but are they separate from Southridge Church?
Yes,
Okay,
I
they're-
believe Southridge is a tenant right now in a building, but they can clear that up for you.
They're what?
I believe they're a tenant in a building right now. I think Southridge operates out of a, you have to ask them. I'm going by memory, and that may not be the
only
case
thing I'm
anymore.
asking is, it's not contiguous to a property they already own.
No, yeah, I follow you. No, it's not like adjoining a church. Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I don't believe they currently own a property. Is that correct? From
Other
Vesta?
property?
Yeah.
Is there anybody here from Southridge? I am not aware of Southridge owning property. What I know of Southridge is one time they operated out of what used to be Albertsons on 84th Street. And there was a billiards place back in there. When they vacated it, the church took that over and operated out of there. Whether they're there today or not, I don't know. I just don't get to that area that much. So they were a tenant in the building. They would not have asked for exemption back then, except for their personal property, because they didn't own the building. Okay, so now once again,
Dan, out of curiosity, this the Papio Greens that were the reference property? Is this the old Papio Greens golf course?
no,
Because they owned that at one point.
do they?
They did.
They did.
They
Did
did.
they sell that?
I don't know. I just know they owned it.
Oh, I wish I knew, because what this would be was one of those examples that's happened to us in the past. Where I remember the Mennonite Brethren had purchased a bunch of land out by Shadow Lake, said, yep, we're building a church here, all this and stuff. Turned around, sold it for a lot of money, didn't build a church on it, right? And you give them the exemption because they did some religious activity on part of it. I think the statute's written to try and prevent somebody from holding something tax-free, like you and I can't do, and then turning around and selling it with not any tax liability. Now, let's just say hypothetically you deny it and say no tax exemption. Once again, Southridge Church has an opportunity, and we talked about this. I talked to I believe was a pastor of the church several days ago, and we talked about different scenarios about how they might be using the land. He said, well, I don't have enough time to meet with my board to come up with what we're going to do with it. I said, well, what you can do is, if the county board denies it or you don't like what the county board did with it, you can file a Turk appeal, and that buys you more time. It buys us all a lot more time to look at what you're doing and see if it passes muster for exemption.
In theory, they can convert to an exempt use. If we find that there's no exempt use now, they can convert to an exempt use by June 30th, reapply by July 1st, and then the board would have until August 15th to take action on that new application.
Just scanning over some of their applications, they do state that there are religious services that take place there. And then on another one, they say that the property is being, will be developed for religious church as they're ready, you know.
And I believe that's absolutely their intention. They wouldn't buy it otherwise, probably. He did, the person I talked to said they did intend to sell one of the lots. That's probably not 1 out of 5, I don't know which one. And maybe that'll change too. But it's 7 acres total, so it's kind of big. But we did, and I was looking for anything that might sound like something that was used before to change my recommendation about an approval, and there was nothing in that conversation, nothing was far enough along to change my attitude on that, so.
So out of curiosity, so Jim just stated that they said that they have used the parcels for religious service. I'm curious as to where the threshold that you're at and the threshold that Legal was talking about, Andy was talking about.
Can I give you one scenario?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay, this is a very good one. Up on Highway 370 and 90th, the southwest corner, the Archdiocese owned a big piece of land for years, and they planted it in alfalfa, and they would cut it, bale it, and sell it, pay the property taxes, never asked for exemption. Trinity Lutheran Church bought it, and they said, well, we want the exemption right away, so we're not doing anything with it. They said, well, we're going to subdivide it, and we're going to start using it. So they put a couple crosses up, they put a fire pit up, they had a softball game, they had a consecration service, as I understand it, and that passed muster for an exemption, but that was one big lot at the time. Then it got divided into 3 lots, and now the church is on the middle lot. They claim they're going to use a further west lot, but I don't know. I haven't seen the transfer statement come through, but I've had conversation with the Sarpy County Historical Society, and they're evidently buying the one by the street. So they are selling part of it off. So these things do happen. So when you go, like, where do you draw the line? Well, if a guy's got 5 lots and they're having their softball and fire pit and maybe vacation Bible school or something, are they doing it on all 5 lots? Maybe just 1 lot, you know? Your mind can really take off, oh, church marathon, we're gonna do the whole thing. But I don't know, but that's where you go to people like Andy and say, what if?
Any other questions for Dan? This is a public hearing. Any member of the public want to speak on this topic? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Anyone want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the assessor's recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kelly to approve the assessor's recommendation of denial, seconded by Commissioner Mixon. Any discussion?
Just to state that I'm going to vote no against this one simply because of the part that I referred to. It says the land will be developed for religious church services and for other related purposes. So I think their intent is there. It's stated on their forms. So.
Please vote.
Okay, A's, Kelly, Burmeister, and Mixon, nays, Klug, and Warren.
Item 5.8 is tax corrections 17189 to 17190. Dan Pittman, assessor.
Motion to approve.
second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kelly, second by Commissioner Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
A's 5, nays none, motion carries.
All agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Equalization is adjourned and will reset for the Board of Commissioners.
Okay,
Welcome to the Sarpy County Board of Commissioners meeting. Today is May 23rd, 2023. It's 3:34 p.m. We have present today Commissioner Kelly, Klug, Warren, Mixon, and Burmeister, along with our County Administrator Dan Hoynes and our County Clerk Deb Hotaling. We'll start with Commissioner and Administrator announcements and comments. We'll start with Commissioner Mixon.
None.
None.
None, thank you.
Dan?
Nothing.
Okay. On to the consent commissioner's agenda. Would anybody like to see any items removed from the consent agenda? Or a motion to approve?
So
Motion
moved.
approved.
Go ahead, Jim. I'll second it.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Warren.
Commissioner
As soon as I get a
Burmeister,
button.
would you like to make the same
I'm sorry.
caveat on that?
Yes, thank you. So there are some items on the consent agenda, some ratifications for the same purposes as before. There were to have publication notices on some items that the publisher did not have proofs of publication on. So the ratifications are there as ministerial items. Is anybody here on any of those ratification items that would like to be heard on items 4.1 through 4.19? If so, please come forward. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda made by Commissioner Warren, seconded by Commissioner Kelly. Any discussion?
Jim, did you hit that?
I don't have a button.
Hold on.
There it is.
Okay, well, I put you in. I don't know who seconded though.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kelly,
Kelly. There we go. Okay.
please vote.
Don, are you, ayes 5, nays none. He didn't vote.
He's abstained. Item 5.1 is public hearing and resolution 2023-113, conversion of the Gretna Rural Fire Protection District to a suburban fire protection district. Kayla Hathcote, Deputy County Attorney, and Attorney Jim Lang.
I'm going to let Jim Lang do all the talking, but if you have any questions, I'm available.
He tried to sit down, he didn't get to.
Thank you. Members of the Sarpy County Board of Commissioners, my name's Jim Lang, 8526 F Street. I'm an attorney, and I represent the Gretna Rural Fire Protection District. We're here today to ask for your approval to convert from a rural fire protection district to a suburban fire protection district. And the reason for that is because of the amount of activity that's have occurred in the Gretna Fire District. We went from about 700 calls back in 2013 to over 1,422. Those can continue to go up. Rod Beefy, our fire chief, is with me today as well. And that pretty much is the reason. The other reason for it is that, as you know, Western Sarpy County is going from a rural area to a suburban area. We have a lot of housing, apartments, commercial area, industrial, so it's much, much different now than it was several years ago, so we're evolving into a suburban district. And this will provide us the opportunity to hire paid personnel, so we're going from a volunteer to a combination district where we're going to have paid personnel plus volunteers. I do want to say one thing about the volunteers right now. They've done a tremendous job over 50 years providing fire and rescue services to Western Sarpy County. Just a tremendous job. They're well trained. They put a lot of hours in and they're dedicated. And so our thanks goes to them. And they're going to be part of the organization as we continue as well. So at this time, we're asking for the approval from the Sarpy County Board to approve the conversion of the Gretna Rural Fire Protection District to a suburban fire protection district effective July 1, 2023. If you have any questions, myself or Rod would be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Lang?
No, just a comment. It's a monumental time and a good move, I think, on behalf of the rural and the city to do a suburban. And thank you for Rod and his leadership on the department, as well as your work on this, Mr. Lang.
And that's a good comment. The city has been part of this. City of Gretna, we have an interlocal where we provide fire protection rescue, but the city is a part of this as well. And they've been very good in working with us at all times, but especially from the situation we're going now from a rural to a suburban district with the additional paid personnel.
Right, and another comment I'll make, and it goes a long way because we have 5 cities in Sarpy County, and so it's really important with the cities and with the fire districts and all fire departments and everything that as we continue to grow and as the growth happens, that we're all working together to put the fire stations in the best spot. And I know we use interlocal agreements, et cetera, but I see Millard's being represented. I see Kevin in the audience. Right. And so it's just looking at that big picture as we all go forward, it really is important that we are always mindful of that and using our resources well. And you know, because there's always areas that might coverage in one district might be a little bit, I would say, quite a ways from a station, but it's on the kind of fringe to the other fire districts. So it's just very important that we're all working together and have this worked out and planned wisely for the future.
Right, the fire districts in Rod in particular, of course, does a very good job of the mutual aid among the various fire districts so that they trade off when they have to. We had our annual banquet here a few months ago, and obviously all of our firefighters were there. I think it was Springfield or one of the other fire departments covered that night. So the various fire departments support each other. Once again, it's a great industry, great, the volunteers did a great job. It's just a real good industry, and they've done a great service relative to fire and rescue in the western Sarpy County and throughout the whole county.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
This is a
I'll
public,
still make a motion. to approve it when it happens.
public hearing. Would any members of the public like to come forward and talk on this subject? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain Commissioner Warren's motion to approve.
I'd like to
And
make a motion to approve.
I'll still second that.
Commissioner Mixon, seconded by Commissioner Mixon. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Kelly.
Item 5.2 is Resolution 2023-141, Interlocal Cooperation Agreement with Sanitary Improvement District SID 328, Sumter Crossing, and Sanitary Improvement District SID 360, Shram 108 for improvements to 108th Street, Portage Drive to Whitewater Drive. Scott Bovick, Deputy Administrator.
Thank you, Commissioners. Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioners. I know oftentimes you see me present these to you, but Kayla Hathcote and Nicole Spitzenberger from the County Attorney's Office are working with me to get these interlocals done, along with the legal representation from the SIDs. And this is one that Kayla did all the work on. So I get to be up here and take the credit, but she did most of the work. So this is an interlocal with the SID 328 and SID 360, Shram 108 and Sumter Crossing. If you look at the map overhead, we also were able to work with the city of Papillion for them to contribute to this project. I know partnering with the cities is something that has been important to the county board. So Papillion actually built the blue highlighted area first. That's an extension into Sumter Crossing and Shram 108, crossing a creek area to open this property for development. Looking at Shram 108 on the east, you'll remember a year or so ago, they came before you and requested to vacate Turkey Road. We allowed them to do that, and we didn't charge them for that as long as they agreed to pave that road, which was previously a rock road, pave that road, realign it and pave it down to the south. On the west side, we've worked with Sumter Crossing, and a couple years ago constructed 114th Street from Shram down to Whitewater Drive. Sumter Crossing paid 1.5 lanes of a 3-lane road. Belterra, which is the development on the west side of 114th Street, also paid for 1.5 lanes. And we did that unique partnership on those 2 roadways because we knew we had a legacy commitment on 108th Street that we wanted to make good on, and that was something that the SIDs had factored into their financing for that area. So looking at those colors, Shram 108 will pay for 1 lane of 108th, Sumter Crossing will pay for a lane, and then the county will pay for a lane of 108th Street down to Whitewater Drive. 108th Street term will continue straight south to connect to Capehart. Right now, Turkey Road kind of veers to the southwest and then straight south. Eventually, Turkey Road will kind of realign and connect into 108th Street perpendicular so that there's a T intersection there. County's cost is $550,000. We do have $600,000 in the 1 and 6 year road program, and next fiscal year's budget, I think the plan is to get this constructed this fall or next spring as the rest of this area opens up for development. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Scott?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Klug, seconded by Commissioner Warren. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Kelly.
Item 6.1 is an executive session on collective bargaining. Jim?
I'm sorry. looking to see if, it is now, I'm sorry. For the protection of the public interest, I move that we go into executive session to discuss collective bargaining.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Warren to go into executive session to discuss collective bargaining. Any discussion? Seconded by Commissioner Mixon. Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Kelly.
3:45, Ange.
Thank you. It is now 4:15 PM. At 3:46, we went into executive session where our discussion was restricted to collective bargaining. I need a motion to return to regular session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Mixon to return to regular session, seconded by Commissioner Klug. Please vote. All agenda items having been addressed as, oh, sorry.
Well, well, I have 2 votes. How about, here, let me fill you in so we got them all. Angie and Mr. Warren. Ayes 4, absent Kelly.
There it is, all right.
Now, all agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Commissioners is adjourned.